Well, it's been a couple days, and it still stings pretty bad. But can it get better? Mm.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Where we get started today is, that is quite an ugly game we witnessed for UCLA against Indiana, right? That's a game where you think you're looking at names, you're looking at opponents, you're thinking, all right, this is a team UCLA wants to be equivalent with, right? This is two teams, right, that UCLA and Indiana changing head coaches for various reasons, coming off different things. If you think about it, UCLA is a program that, as much as we want to crap on Chip Kelly, right? And I was loving Chip Kelly as much as I could until we couldn't. And we want to crap on Chip Kelly. He did get wins in the last few years, regardless of who they were, whether it's the big game. UCLA, compared to the Indiana program in the last few years, was light years ahead. Light years. Now, when you look at the lack of recruiting Chip Kelly had, this fall off was coming for UCLA. It was getting ready to collapse. And maybe this is what we saw, a slight collapse. But still, this is a UCLA team with some good pieces, with an Indiana team that brought quite a few James Madison players. And James Madison was good last year, don't get me wrong. But I would think UCLA, with similar players, could be able to handle what Indiana brought to the table. That wasn't the case. If anything, they got waxed. And the offense is where we're going to start today. They look absolutely lost through 2 weeks of the season. Is it a Bieniemy thing? Is it an offensive line thing? Is it just sheerly the complexity of the offense? UCLA can't run. Man, I'm a Raiders fan too. Whatever you think about that, I can't watch football games and expect my team to run the football. Whenever I'm watching football, apparently my favorite teams, they don't know how to run the football. So I don't know what a winning running team looks like anymore. It's been a long time. All right. So UCLA, who prided themselves on running the football, and I believe I was reading and listening to DeShaun Foster's quotes from the first day of Monday practice of the new week prior to the LSU game. And I wasn't really impressed by his answers about, are they going to fix it? What's it going to fix? And it's even worse with the running game not succeeding as much, considering you've got a running back head coach, right? You've got a running back offensive coordinator. You have a running backs coach. You have the returning running backs last year who are dynamic between Harden and Keegan Jones, who is already underutilized in 23. And he's a dynamo in the backfield with so many options as fullbacks and running backs as we wait for Berger to get to full conditioning strength to be ready to be utilized on a full-time basis, whether as a 3 or a 2 back. A quarterback that's returned. Receiving core that is not awful. A solid tight end, and an experienced offensive line. And UCLA was only able to churn out 230 yards, looked woeful against Hawaii, a Hawaii team who, mind you, went to Sam Houston State and got absolutely blasted. So that just makes UCLA look worse. They just look lost, right? It's just frustrating. Is it a you got to get yelled at all week by coach type of thing to have them figure it out? Or they just completely lost with similar players that could churn out what was a terrible what we considered by Chip Kelly standards, a terrible offense that still was able to get out to 400, 500 yards a game and run the ball, throw the ball, right? It's just frustrating. I look at the rushing yards. Yes, UCLA nearly got to 100, which was way better than what they did against Hawaii. That's still not close enough to a decent standard when your passing game is only getting 142 yards passing and not the completion percentage you want when the opposing quarterback was going for 3 bills and 76% completion percentage. Okay, we're talking offense. UCLA averaged nearly 5 yards of play. Okay, not horrible, not spectacular. The Bruins averaged close to 9 yards per completion when then the Bruins were unable to get things done. When it came to getting in the red zone, UCLA could not convert into touchdowns, right? When UCLA was able to get in the red zone in the early part of the second half and still maybe make it a game, they got stopped, all right? They got stopped. And then when they got deep down there later in the game on the flag happy drive in the late third quarter, I believe early fourth quarter, they still could not get it into the end zone, right? And this is Garbers, who, as much as he has not impressed, he has impressed before. He led UCLA to a strong second half surge last year. So we know he's capable. So does the blame go towards Eric Bieniemy and the offense, right? Does it go towards the offensive coordinator? Is that pinned back to all these questions coming around? Is there a reason he wasn't hired for more for other gigs after the Commanders, prior to the Commanders' job? When Ron Rivera gave him that opportunity, is UCLA just hurting from a lack of talent in certain key spots of strength that you need to have in Big Ten life, where everybody's like, UCLA is not a Big Ten team, they're not going to be able to hang? Is that true in the offensive line and the defensive line? Can you just toughen up a team in a week to look more competitive, right? Because they're not going to have the talent to beat LSU, right? LSU's more talented. Oregon's more talented. Penn State's more talented. They're not going to be favored probably for the rest of the season the way these first 2 weeks have gone, especially offensively. But can they look competitive? Can they be just not good enough, right? It's not the fact that they lost to Indiana. It's the fact that they got waxed by Indiana at home. Didn't really have a pulse in large parts of this game, that they felt they could do enough to come back. And that's what's frustrating. That's what's frustrating, that they can't compile drives again and again and convert. All right, this offense has looked somewhat pathetic through the first 2 weeks. And yes, they're completely changing systems. This team should be given more time, but they're not. The national spotlight is cast on it, whether they want it or not, because they are in the Big Ten. You're playing a team that has been a Big Ten cellar dweller and is punching their way up and is earning more respect as we speak with Indiana, right? These are two programs that have turned out to be on level playing fields, and UCLA couldn't even be favored at home. And despite not being favored at home, they got that number, that line, minus 3 Indiana, that got blown out of proportion with the Hoosiers taking it to them physically. Moxie just converting again and again, punching him in the mouth, and UCLA had no answer. Because Garbers continues to get hit. That was the same stories for Garbers and for Dante and for Colin Schlee last year. Couldn't keep him upright without getting a hit. This year, if you apparently bring your hand above the shoulder pads, you're going to get a penalty. That's how Indiana got 30 billion penalties. I think some of those were a little favorable towards UCLA. I'm not sure where UCLA is missing, but again, this is an offensive coordinator who has a track history of not utilizing the run. And when you had Pat Mahomes, you don't really need the run, right? I believe the Chiefs, they didn't really need the run because Mahomes, dual threat, he will chuck it, he'll extend plays. They're just a different beast in Kansas City. So you can get away with not needing to design the crazy run games or screen, but the Bruins aren't executing at a Kansas City level. They're not executing on what needs to be an NFL level. I think Garbers is a good college QB, but to decipher an NFL offense for all these guys, they're just not getting it. Now there's different places and opportunities where they're missing, and I think there's room for improvement. But in the first couple of games, this offense has been a D, and that's generous. A D- is probably where it's at. They did enough to beat Hawaii, who then got blasted in their third game of the year. And now UCLA has to go back to the drawing board. Can we fix something on the offensive line? There were some positive runs. They did a little bit better in the running game. But one of these two things has to click. Garbers has to be throwing for 3 bills, or if he's going to go for 220, a little under 100, UCLA has to run the football much better. They have to get J. Michael Sturdivant involved. And whether it's him running different routes, Maybe it's getting more Rico Flores, but your leading receivers can't be running backs and tight ends. As good as Monteval is, they have to have more with what they have in the receiving room. If they're talking and lauding about, hey, we've got receivers that they got to earn themselves, they got to make sure I don't get benched because they're so good, they're all good. Well, man, right? It's frustrating. Absolutely frustrating to see what it is. So this offense, grade-wise, is a D-. And this is, an LSU team coming up that isn't certainly spectacular defensively. I don't think they are. So it'll be a big, glaring, bad sign if the Bruins can't get a touchdown against LSU. On the road, crazy. I know Tiger Stadium's crazy. But D- effort, and we're going to go deeper into optimistic ways for the offense later in the week. Still grading this. It was frustrating. It's frustrating, and it has to improve immediately. Defensively, all right, UCLA just got a little bit out-muscled. Missed opportunities, all right? If you're looking at this game and you're thinking, where did the Bruins miss opportunities? It was on defense. It wasn't on offense, which is why it's scary that the Bruins haven't showcased more offensively. It was defensively that they missed their opportunities where they could have maybe kept this game a little more interesting than it ended up being. We'll talk about that next. Five-hour energy fixes tired fast. Whatever you have a long to-do list for work or at home, and you're like, man, I got to get this done before the big games. Well, you can check everything off after you take a 5-hour energy shot. So you have the most important supply, 5-hour energy shots to help you get that energy to get through the tough parts of the DIY projects you need to get done before the game. Zero sugar, convenient, it's portable, and it's perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. It's got flavors galore on the 5-hour energy website, and there's a flavor for everybody. So try them all. Tropical burst, grape, and more. And you can have the option to have a 12-pack or 24-pack built by your own self and delivered to your door. Go to 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get some 5-hour energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. The offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, here we go. Second segment. We're talking defense, a little bit special teams. All right. Well, the punt return didn't have to do anything because Indiana never punted. Cool. They never did anything. UCLA field goals wise. We saw Bagani go out there. They missed their second field goal of the year. That was a makeable chance. Really set the Bruins back a little bit because if you missed the field goal, the one thing you could be banking on, that was frustrating. All right. So special teams, I thought was disappointing. But the fact that UCLA never had to punt return goes to our point for the defense. This game, UCLA's defense got out-muscled. The lack of a pass rush really came to a big glaring eyesore in this game. UCLA, their inability to pressure, which we knew was going to potentially be a problem this year after you lose the talent they had last year and just really have a lot of guys, some getting healthy, but not a lot for Akaka Malloy in a new year and a new system to go from elite talent where the defense prided itself on the defensive line edge rushing wise. They're trying everything. And then you leave the secondary left alone in man-to-man coverage in deep third and long situations. And Indiana converted practically every single time. Indiana was 3 of 4 when it comes to converting third downs. 9 of 12, but if you do some fractions, do some math, that was about a 75% conversion rate on third down. UCLA offensively was 2 of 8. So Indiana went 9 of 12 on third down. And the one time they had fourth down at midfield with the game semi-still in the balance, I guess, was UCLA jumping off sides, which is why it looks even worse for this team after 2 weeks to completely just not look prepared in certain situations, right? It's 4th and 3. What are you not going to do? What is the tailor-made thing a team that is ill-prepared and ill-disciplined? They'll jump off sides on 4th and 3 And maybe that also goes back to the point where UCLA can't trust that they're going to get pressure. So they're so eager to jump and blitz that they need to jump the snap count. All right. I don't want to pin this all on Akaika Malloy at this moment. He's trying his best, right? He is trying his best. Maybe I'm being a little nice. And yes, the third down conversion rate, the 7 yards per play, 12 yards per completion, frustrating. But Indiana converted every single time in the red zone. They scored 42 points. Yes, one of those involved UCLA dropping the ball at their own part of the field. Whatever. But it looked like between Lawton, between Ellison, whoever was carrying the ball, they popped off a Bruin defender behind the line of scrimmage. So it seemed like UCLA was in decent position to make some plays defensively. They just did not. They did not, right? That's why it's scary offensively. It just doesn't seem like they're in the right position to do things correctly. It's not like, oh, we had an overthrow or every single play was just messed up. They got to fix things in practice. No, it's because it just doesn't look like there's anything there. And maybe when there is, then they just don't have the pressure. They don't have the protection to help Garbers out. Defensively, I'm not saying they're spectacular and they're going to be the last year level under Danton Lynn, but it's not like Akaika Malloy in this defense. They're not chopped liver. This is a team that decent moments in the game, they looked in position and they missed the tackles. Where in that game where they guess right on some plays, they make the right plays blitz-wise, they make the tackles, they don't have the running backs pinball off them on 3rd and 5 late in the game and go just dig the knife in a little deeper and twist it. When UCLA makes these plays, they will pull off an upset. And considering what they've looked like the first 2 weeks, any game going forward will be considered a UCLA upset. Because I'm not sure they'll even be favored at home versus Minnesota at this point. With the way they're like favored to lose by 22 points to LSU or 21, whether it's anything, UCLA will be considered to win a game down the stretch. I think for the next few months, it'll be an upset. And especially the next 3 weeks, it'll be considered an upset. And for UCLA to do so, they have to hang their hats on the defense, which was frustrating that the pass just gashed the secondary. That looked pretty decent against Braden Shager week 1 and against Hawaii, although Shager was a little beaten up. You had an offensive player of the year right there playing quarterback for Rourke. And as all the players that Kurt Signetti brought from James Madison, he brought Rourke over, did his homework. And this is a guy who's a pocket passer, clean, accurate, and he dissected the UCLA defense. So a less accurate thrower, UCLA could have done some things, maybe. But somebody who converted 3rd and 15, right? That first drive, UCLA had Indiana to 3 third downs. 3 third downs. Tone and momentum were set when Indiana went down the field, got to the 50 and like a play, and then 3rd and long converted. 3rd and medium converted. 3rd and whatever converted. Later in the game, 3rd and goal converted. When they had more will later in the game, they ran 3rd and 5, bounced off a tackle, and got a first down. That was the hallmark of a team more physical, prepared, and wanting it a little more. The defense has its moments. In this game, UCLA, 4.5 sacks, right? Close to it. This is a team where it just was frustrating for this UCLA team. Excuse me, not 4.5 sacks. Reading the wrong thing. Stat page, just reading the wrong thing. Not 4.5 sacks. They had 4 tackles for loss, 0 sacks. 0 sacks from the defense looking at the stat page, right? It was just frustrating. They couldn't force the turnover. They got 1 QB hurry. They had a few pass breakups, but when the quarterback's throwing 76%, completing everything, it doesn't mean as much. And yes, a couple of ball luck, right? UCLA got a couple of tip drill or 1 tip drill interception in week 1. They broke up a couple of passes, but in the end, when UCLA's lack of pressure is hurting the secondary this year, which is a veteran group and probably better than we'd want to give them credit for after this game. And yes, it's disappointing. You saw Kanye Clark go down with injury. Okay. I hope there's more for UCLA to do, and there's more hopefully for the Bruins, but they didn't get any pressure. And while Indiana didn't run as much as they wanted, or as they had showcased in the first 2 weeks, They still ran it when they wanted to. They bounced off tackles, always got positive yardage. The quarterback just carved them. It was frustrating. So this performance was a D plus defensively. And you're wondering, how can the defense that gives it 42 points get a D plus? Well, they're still better than the offense in this moment. Is there hope? Yes. I think there are quite a few moments in this game. And by quite a few, I don't mean like every single play, every single drive, every time Indiana scored that would have stopped them. But say the opening drive, you stop them on one of those third downs, you hold Indiana to a field goal, right? That's 2 straight opening drives in back-to-back games to open this season in very different circumstances where the UCLA Bruins are down after the opening possession from the defense. One, because the special teams hurt them and the Bruins forgot to send players out there week 1. This one, UCLA couldn't get off the field, literally, on third down. And that defined the game. And I think not every single time UCLA will get carved up on third down. I think Indiana came to send a message, and they did. But that doesn't mean they won't struggle for UCLA in weeks to come. And that doesn't mean they won't be successful on defense in weeks to come. D plus defensively. Okay? All right. We're done. I'm done grading. All right, special teams, D, because, they missed the field goal. That was the real thing they had to do in this game. All right, another thing, too, we're going to talk about the Big Ten Conference. All right, let's look around the conference, see what these teams did. That's how we're going to end it. And then the next episode, we will talk a little more about positivity, wash the slate clean, and then move forward towards LSU week about what this team can do to improve, because their best football is ahead of them. I just believe they've already hit rock bottom in week 2. We hope. Now we move on to the rest of the Big Ten. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. From now until September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you can get every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game for free. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payments, and you can cancel any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, cruising on here, final segment for Locked On UCLA. This is a UCLA team that's trying to compete with some of the other teams in the Big Ten. Let's take a look at how they did. All right. Wisconsin. Well, the Bruins don't have Wisconsin this year, and maybe they hope they did because Wisconsin's quarterback got hurt, and he's out for the year. Tyler Van Dyke, I hope he has a quick recovery, but the Badgers got blasted at home by Alabama, a game where things got ugly quick. And the Badgers were, without their quarterback, it was a little rough for them to play against Jalen Milroe, a dual threat quarterback that is apparently thriving so far with some protection under Kalen DeBoer. Oregon finally looked like the complete team. They showed up for their rivalry against Oregon State in Reser Stadium, 49-14. Makes it a little concerning for the Bruins in a couple weeks when their next home game is expected to be a top 10 team. All right. They faced Indiana, who is expected to be near the bottom of the Big Ten. Then when you face a top 10 team like Oregon, what are the Bruins, what are we trying to do to the rest of the Rose Bowl? It's probably going to be tarped up, and I hope UCLA can shock Oregon. It's happened before in the past. But if they're playing like they did against Oregon State, or rivalry energy, then the Bruins might have nothing in the next couple weeks. All right, Michigan, Arkansas State. Michigan is probably one of the most overrated teams because they won the championship. They don't have the quarterback. They don't have the running back, and they have struggled to beat teams. They are super solid defensively, and Sharon Moore, the new head coach, is going to have to do a lot of thinking, a lot of figuring out if his team is going to make it to a college football playoff and get through this Big Ten schedule. 28-18, they beat Arkansas State. That was not pretty. It would have been a unique year for UCLA to play Michigan because they are down. Maybe they can go spy some plays and get better later in the year. I don't know. Notre Dame, angry, took down Purdue 66-7. Sorry, Bruins fans. We don't got Purdue on the schedule. That would have been a fun one. But Purdue, not looking good. Nebraska, that's the game UCLA has later on the schedule. Nebraska is a ranked team. They've got a lot of hype. Dylan Raiola. I'm wondering, is that a trap game where Nebraska is expecting to win that game on a Saturday in November at home? UCLA looks the way it does. A true freshman makes a mistake. He did throw an interception against Northern Iowa. And I wonder if UCLA comes with a game plan. Is that a game down the line where you overlook the Bruins? Maybe Nebraska could be slightly overrated, but right now they're looking pretty good. They are 3-0 at home. Remember, they played Colorado. They just played Northern Iowa. They got a lot of hype. Could that be a game down the line where we're starting and looking where are games UCLA could potentially smell an upset if they're going to believe and dream big and have a team look past them? The team with the true freshman quarterback, well, they still took care of business and dominated at home where they've sold out games for many decades, and many games in a row. So Nebraska looking pretty good right now for the Huskers, and their true freshman quarterback playing pretty solidly. So they're looking good. They're ranked. They're excited. Maybe something changes. No. Illinois, fresh off a big victory against Kansas, they dominated Central Michigan. UCLA doesn't have them on the schedule. That would be a unique game. Probably might be similar to an Indiana situation. A team waiting to look better, looking with Luke Altmaier to play and outplay the expectations, but somebody in this conference has to be near the bottom. Is that Illinois or somebody else? Michigan State, unbeaten. They snuck a win. They're unbeaten through 3 weeks. They won 40-0. It's Prairie View A&M. You're not going to learn much about Sparty by playing Prairie View A&M. Minnesota, they're 2-1. They defeated Nevada. Nevada's 1-3. They beat them 27-0. The PJ Fleck game in October 12th, that is the next potential game for UCLA to maybe be favored. And I'm not sure at this moment they actually will be, depending on how they look in these next few weeks. So the next time UCLA plays Minnesota, or when they do play Minnesota, that is what is supposed to be, like the Indiana game, the winnable game on the schedule. The winnable game. And if UCLA wants to get that second win to whatever win total they get this year, that is the next expected realistic target on the schedule. They took care of business against their Mountain West foe. Not sure how long the Mountain West Conference will be together, but Minnesota took care of them. That's an impressive performance. That is the next possible battle for UCLA. Now you look at Washington State. Washington State took it to Washington in Seattle against the Huskies. 24-19. Washington State 3-0. Washington 2-1. I do think UCLA, with a Washington team, with Jed Fish not maybe ready with all of his guys having to take over for a Kalen DeBoer-led team that lost all its talent from a year ago, that this is the strongest Washington team Jed Fish is going to have. So this is a year to beat Washington. Now is the time. Gives me, I don't want to say confidence. I'm not entirely afraid when they go into Seattle later in the year. But UCLA has to prove that they're ready by that time to maybe steal on the road when they're playing Washington in mid-November on a Friday night in a road game in the Big Ten, former Pac-12 rival, that they can actually do it. Against a coach that wants to stick it to them, because UCLA could have had Jed Fish once, they could have had him twice. They chose not to because they took forever to get rid of Chip Kelly, which they never ended up doing, and they hired Chip Kelly over Jed Fish. So that's going to be a guy who's fired up and enjoying his new life at Lamont Lake. Then Iowa beats Troy 38-21. Scary. Iowa scored 38 points. Not so scary. Troy scored 21. They're 0-3. Is this an Iowa team with defense or an Iowa team with offense? I don't know. Iowa is supposed to come invade the Rose Bowl with their fans. I wonder what that's going to mean. That could be that's one of those back-to-back Friday night games in where it's going to be a 6 p.m. kick. Friday night, we're all going to be late. It's Los Angeles, trying to get to Pasadena. It's tough to get to. Nobody's really going to be tailgating at 3 p.m., 2 p.m. on a Friday in Los Angeles, unless it's Hawkeye fans. Or if you got a later Veterans Day holiday. UCLA, the Iowa game. Iowa hasn't fully looked impressive, especially after choking that Iowa State game at home. And they played each of their first 3 games at home. UCLA, though, has to prove they can do something offensively to get past what is supposed to be a stingy Iowa defense. Northwestern crushed Eastern Illinois as they expected. Maryland, strong win on the road at Virginia, 27-13. A team or two may have had a bye. We'll talk about those teams later in the year. That's what happened in the Big Ten. It's just weird that UCLA, there are teams on their schedule that are beatable. It's just that UCLA, unfortunately, hasn't proven through 2 weeks, 3 weeks actually, 2 games, that they're buttoned up to where this was just a little blip on the radar. That is what's the scary thing. That's the concerning thing right now for us as UCLA fans. But next episode, I'm going to go a little deeper into how can we turn the page, what can change, and what specifically needs to change. All right? Defense, they need to make the plays because they're in the backfield sometimes and they have an opportunity to. Offensively, a little trickier. That's why you should stay tuned for the next Locked On UCLA episode as we talk about it, discuss it, and try to figure it out. All right? Get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Download, subscribe. Thanks for your support. It's been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.